Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, very good, very good. Glad that you were able to present. This is very interesting session now.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Initially I miscalculated the time. So I was up at 1 a.m. watching the other session before I realized that I was at 9 a.m.
Well, you are some dedicated person, so.
Believe me, my dedication was tested, and then I was like, this is actually very interesting. So I actually enjoyed that session very much.
No, I'm really glad that you did. And so most of the participants are in that room that you're seeing now. So I'll let them take it.
Okay, thank you.
One alteration I have made, Professor Rustagi.
Thank you.
Dr. Mansa Raghavan will be the first speaker because he has some work, urgent work. So please.
Catherine, would that be okay?
Oh, that's fine. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Jagdish Rai.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
So it is time for us to begin with our fifth session of this conference. I, Vaishali Parihar, Director of Media, DB Welfare Society.
I, Rahul Kushwaha, Director of Human Resources in Divi Welfare Society.
We jointly take this privilege to warmly welcome all our guests and delegates in this fifth session of this International Conference on Ancient Science, Technology and Civilization, which is jointly organized by DB Welfare Society, STEM Institute India, and International Educators Group, Washington, USA, supported by, that is BAG, an Energy Research Society, Yog Pran Vidya, Learn Quick Zone, and Youth for Nation. We welcome you all. Now, we would like to begin our session for the same, and I take this pleasure to invite our Honorable Chairperson and International Convener of this conference, the founder of International Educators Group, Washington, USA, Dr. Narendra Rustagi, sir.
Thank you very much, Vaishali, and welcome everyone. Especially Catherine, you probably didn't attend the first one where I talked about why this conference is organized. So I'll say that briefly. And that is, as we had talked, individually, that during European invasions or invasions before that, in case of India, the Mughal invasions, the lot of infrastructure and knowledge base was destroyed. And we wanted to see what lessons can we learn from that experience that we are able to revisit now, and what strategies can we develop so that this thing doesn't happen in future. So with that, I would let Vaishali introduce the first speaker in the session, Professor Raghavan. Vaishali.
Sir, Dr. Mansa Raghavan. She is Neuberger Family Assistant Professor of Human Genetics. She honored with the Neuberger Family Assistant Professors Program, University of Chicago from 2018 to 2023. She is a researcher and her scholarly interests are ancient DNA, genomics, human evolution, population, and evolutionary genetics. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. That says host disabled participant. Okay, while we wait for the technical issue to be sorted, I want to take this opportunity to thank you all. It's a pleasure to be associated with this conference, and really an honor to talk to you all today. Special thanks to all the organizers for having me here. And here we go. I hope you could share, you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I will get started on the topic around ancient DNA or paleogenomics revolution and our molecular past, which is also my expertise. And this is something you got a flavor of a couple of days back on the first day of the conference when Dr. Ganeshwar Chaubey spoke to you all about the Ajnala project that he and colleagues have led. So that was also based on historical or DNA from the past. So I thought maybe we could take a step back and also in preparation for the talk, I think it's the fourth or fifth talk in the same session by my collaborator, Dr. Neeraj Rai, who will also be talking about the past and the molecular past. So I thought I'll maybe just give everybody some of the theoretical underpinnings of what is this field, what exactly is ancient DNA, what are we trying to achieve with this sort of data. So I'm a faculty member at University of Chicago, which is where I've been since 2018, but I extensively collaborate with many of my colleagues, including Dr. Neeraj Rai in India. So here's my talk structure very briefly. It's not a long talk. I'll talk a little bit about what is ancient DNA, what are some of the different sort of varied applications, what are different people asking in terms of questions, and then one short case study by the way of my own PhD work that I did a few years back. So, we always have this intense curiosity when we look around us. Humans, actually are very, very similar genetically. We share about 99.9% of our DNA content, yet we have this incredible phenotypic diversity, when you look around, whether it's the way we look, the way we manifest diseases, the way we adapt to environments. It's very variable across global populations. So, research groups like mine, who are human geneticists, we like to understand what are the evolutionary processes that have been involved in creating this diversity that we see around us. So this sort of has driven gives it this temporal, aspect to the investigation. And the reason why we ask this is because we know now both genetics and archaeology have established that modern humans have a shared origin in Africa. In fact, some of these dates are now pushed back even more. Anatomically modern humans originated in Africa about, somewhere between 150 to 200,000 years before present. A sort of a subpopulation of the ancestral African population left between 60 to 100,000 years, and eventually colonized or peopled different parts of the world, including, Americas being one of the last major land masses to be peopled. South Asia, you can see, forms one of the critical routes from migrations from sort of the western part all the way down to Oceania. Although these routes, just be careful that these arrows doesn't necessarily mean that that's the path that ancient humans took. It's just a broad sort of directionality to where and how humans moved and which time periods. So this obviously means that we all have a shared history. Very recent in our evolutionary timescales. Yet, what has caused this sort of radiation across the globe, and what gives us the local sort of adaptive differences that we see today? So these are some of the questions that we're all very curious about. And so I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. When we're sort of asking these questions, obviously we can do a couple of things. We can sequence the DNA of everybody who's living today, but it can only sort of give us information, well-resolved information about people who live, who are around today. What it lacks is a lot of resolution about who are the ancestors and how did they what did their genetics look like, and who contributed to which modern populations, and who didn't. The other perspective of the past that we perhaps cannot get from just studying living people is that there may have been many lineages represented in gray. These are, potentially human lineages or human populations in the past who went extinct. So they're still very much part of the human history. But if we sequence people who are alive today, they may not represent all these extinct lineages. So we're losing a lot of the nuances of our past by just sequencing and studying people who live today. So hence, this field of ancient DNA has taken off. And basically what this gives us is this very direct window into what the genetic landscape was like for our species or other species back in time. So it's a direct window into the evolutionary processes and how the DNA has changed over time. And so this is usually a cartoon that I really like because this really shows the impact of ancient DNA. This is something, it's very collaborative. We have to work with archaeologists, with paleoanthropologists, because a lot of obviously the ancient samples are coming from archaeological excavations. And so this is what I have portrayed here, that we derive a lot of protocols, analytical skills from, of course, molecular biology, genetics, but we're working very actively in ancient DNA with social scientists, with geoscientists, because a lot of the samples are coming from sort of archaeological contexts or burial contexts. So it's very important for us to cross-talk, especially when you think about the history of our species. It's not just DNA; it's also other aspects that make us who we are today. So it's very important for different disciplines to work together. So you may wonder, when I say ancient DNA, what are we talking about? What do we normally process in the lab? So this shows that there's people have been very creative and used a whole lot of different sources, including archives, herbarium samples, shells, paleofeces even. But really, what I've outlined here, these are the two major sources of ancient DNA. For humans, particularly, it's the bone remains that, of course, we get in archaeological contexts that maybe with archaeologists, maybe museums, maybe in university collections as well. So that's normally for us who are studying ancient DNA on humans, we get mostly bones and teeth from collections. People are also using, in fact, sediment samples sometimes, because if you don't find, macrofossils or bones, you could think of sort of microfossils that have gotten lodged in sediments, especially in caves where ancient humans may have seeked habitation. And so people are also exploring the possibility of getting DNA from ancient times directly from the soil, which is what I've shown here. So let me skip ahead because I want to actually get to the interesting part. So I wanted to quickly give you a flavor. I did say, of course, that I study ancient human DNA, but that's not the only species or the only question people are asking. So I want to also give you a flavor of what creative spaces people are exploring with ancient DNA. So as I mentioned, people are using these soil and ice cores. And so so I'm very, very quickly, and I've got the references underneath. So for people who want to follow up, you can derive that and go read the paper. But for example, one of the case studies with coring and getting DNA is, people have found that in Greenland, so this is Greenland up here. So they found when they sample these cores down the ice, the ice glaciers, which are present today, then you can imagine that the bottom of that will represent the older times, whereas the top of the core will represent, the ice today. So they found that back in the past, they can actually retrieve DNA from, plant and animal species, and insects, which are today found in more temperate regions. And so this sort of gives us some indication that maybe 400, 500,000 years ago, Greenland actually had not the tundra or the Arctic kind of vegetation we see today, but it had maybe a bit more sort of temperate tundra sort of vegetation. So ancient DNA has been used to also do environmental reconstructions by looking at the biodiversity in the past. It has also been used to look at which animals have gone extinct over time, which can give us a very good idea of what are some of the causes of major extinctions. For example, today we're going through climate change, and how does that impact a lot of vulnerable species. And so looking into the past and deriving lessons from the past by looking at, for example, how some of these mammoths and muskox, woolly rhinos, a lot of big equids in North America have all gone extinct in the last 10,000 years. And so by correlating the DNA measures, which can tell you something about the population size and existence of these species in the past, to maybe correlates like climate change or vegetation change or humans hunting. So all of these data can be sort of overlaid, and we can sort of get better resolution as to why certain species have gone extinct over time, and what can we learn from that to better our conservation measures today. People have also used ancient DNA to identify new, hominins. So basically, of course, today we are the only humans alive, but in the past we weren't. You may have heard of Neanderthals, Denisovans. These are all sister or related hominin species to modern humans, and they existed in the past. And in fact, ancient DNA has told us not only did they exist in the past, they also actually intermixed with modern humans. So today, all of us who are not deriving from African ancestry, so all non-Africans, in fact, have about 2 to 4% of our DNA, which is coming from this, extinct Neanderthals. So this is also something that's only been identified because we have ancient DNA from these Neanderthals and Denisovans and other, sister species of humans. Ancient DNA has also given us really good insight into domestication of different species, dogs, sheep, cattle, horses, and people have looked at how over time, for example, these are horse breeds over time, pre-domestication and post-domestication. How has the mutation and the changes in DNA, how have they accumulated? And this is a very classic signal of domestication, because humans, when you domesticate, you select for certain phenotypes. You select, for example, you want your animal to be more docile. You want your animal to be maybe giving more milk. So you're selecting, domestication is an artificial selection process mediated by humans. And so you can see that in the genetics of the domesticated species over time. And so this has also given us very good insights of how past our ancestors were domesticating the species that we today consider, as run-of-the-mill domesticates. And one of the last things I want to highlight, that ancient DNA has also given us a lot of insights into what kind of infections lived in the past. So from the bones that we get from the ancient remains, we can also potentially extract things like TB. Here is a plague, so the bacteria Yersinia pestis, which causes plague. So a lot of these ancient remains from different parts of the world that have been analyzed have also given us ideas of what sort of infections our ancestors were suffering from. Do we have some, particularly today we're going through COVID, what sort of other pandemics and epidemics existed in the past. And in fact, how have these viruses and bacteria also evolved over time? Because a lot of them today we talk about, resistance strategies. How has that accumulated over time? So again, when we go back into the past, we can directly see how the DNA is changing in response to a lot of these environmental and human-mediated, selection factors. However, at the end of the day, ancient DNA has been the most powerful in restoring our species history. So keeping that in mind, I want to close by quickly giving a case study that I was, I led as a PhD student. So I want to take you all to the Americas. So the Americas was the earliest archaeological evidence of modern humans in the Americas is somewhere between sort of around 14 to 15,000 years. This is securely dated archaeological evidence. And so the last, century or so, a lot of anthropologists and archaeologists have debated various sources of modern humans arriving in the Americas. One has been through the Bering Strait from East Asia, Siberia into North America, and then spreading down. And in this case, I want to remind you that, until about 12,000 years, the world was going through the last ice age. So it was very cold. A lot of the water was held up in these big glaciers. And so what we see today as water, the Bering Strait, used to be a land bridge. And so this would have been an easy route for people to cross from what we know today, Siberia here, into North America. But there have been other proposals as well. Some people have proposed that early humans entered the Americas from the south, from the Polynesian islands, and then populated the rest. And this is based on anthropological associations between ancient remains from the Americas and comparing their skull morphology to modern living populations. So this is not based on genetics, it's based on craniomorphological assessments. This has not seen a lot of genetic support. Genetics still supports the first hypothesis, which is people moving from Asia into the Americas. And the final one has been even more sort of controversial, which is that early humans are proposed to have come from Europe, and then basically later get replaced by Native Americans who come from East Asia. And this, of course, is very, very controversial because this imposes on the sensitivity of Native Americans, given the trauma that they faced during the Columbus colonization by Europeans. And this has been proposed based on, on similarities of stone tools. So these archaeologists who propose this say that people in Europe and in Northern America were making similar stone tools at that time. So that similarity can only be possible if these people were the same ones who made these stone tools and then came over to North America and made the same stone tool. So again, it has no genetic basis so far. And so this is where sort of my PhD started. So we wondered who are the early founder populations in the Americas. And for that, we went to Siberia and we collaborated with some Russian archaeologists, and we got a piece of bone from a burial site in Malta, which is a archaeological site. It's dated to 24,000 years before present. So that's how old the person who was buried there was. Here are some photos and reconstructions of the burial. It's a small boy. It's about 3 or 4-year-old boy who was buried at the time. And so we got remains, so a little piece of bone, a humerus bone from this individual. And I did some ancient DNA analysis as part of my PhD. And yeah, this is the age of the individual. And what we found very quickly, to summarize, is that this is a sort of very simplistic tree that of relationships of modern human populations. So this, for example, you can consider this is the ancestral African population from which we have modern Africans coming in one wave. Then we have non-Africans from which we have branches leading to modern East Asians like Chinese, Japanese. And then you have one that's leading to modern Western Eurasians who are Europeans. And somewhere related to East Asians are the modern Native Americans. And this has been sort of what genetics has told so far, until we published this paper where we found that actually this ancient little boy that we included in our analysis, the only ancient sample in this analysis, actually suggests that Native Americans, sure, they are related to East Asians. That supports the Bering Strait migration, but a huge proportion of the ancestry is coming from this population that this Malta child belonged to, which is actually related to modern Europeans. So there is a little bit of ancestry, and we propose this sort of dual origin model for the first time for Native Americans based on empirical data, which again, if you just look at the modern sequence, the DNA sequence of the Native Americans, you won't find this signature. You'll only see that they are closely related to East Asians. So only because we have this ancient DNA data from the Siberian child, we could propose that modern Native Americans have two sources of ancestry, one that is from East Asia, related to modern East Asians, and one that's related a little bit further back in time to the same population or the meta population that gave rise to modern Europeans. And so this has been very, very interesting for us for proposing, and of course it means a lot for the history of Native Americans, where they come from, and also contributes a little bit to understanding of maybe disease risks further down the line. However, I want to leave you with this one last slide, which is that despite all the work that we've been doing, you can see that these red dots represent, as of 2018, what are the different human ancient DNA samples that have been published. You can see most of them come from Europe. Huge gaps in many of the different regions of the world, including South Asia. And so, the time is ripe to have these sort of sensitive and thoughtful studies and collaborations with archaeologists and geneticists to actually study our past and extend this sort of insights that we, for example, got in the Americas to also other regions of the world. So with that, I thank you. I hope that this has been, it was a little bit of a whirlwind, what is ancient DNA, but I hope this gives you a flavor for what is this field that we are working in. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you very much. I cannot hear you, Dr.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I really loved the presentation.
Yeah.
And with that, I would give the mic back to Vaishali, who would introduce the next speaker. So if there are any questions, in the interest of time, I suggest that you put it on chat and Dr. Raghavan can answer them later. Thank
actually,
you.
I do have to leave for my office now. It's morning now,
Okay.
but I will definitely keep checking my WhatsApp, and maybe the organizers can send it there, and I will respond right away if over WhatsApp,
Okay.
and you can communicate it. I apologize. It's morning time here, so I have to run to my lab.
No, that's all right. It's understandable.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Appreciate it. Okay, bye-bye. Vaishali?
Rahul, who's the next speaker?
Now I would like to request Professor Catherine Barrett Gaines. So Professor Catherine Barrett Gaines is a professor at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, USA, and is the author of Lake Catawba Salt and History of the African Great Lakes. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. It's lovely to present this way. This is the wonderful century that we can do this kind of thing together all over the world. It's really a good time to be a human being. So I'll be able to share.
Yeah, I should be able
Okay.
to
We are
share.
making you a host, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now it's done.
Thank you. So I want to show you some. You're seeing the schedule, right? Is that correct? What
Yeah.
you're seeing? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you about ancient African salt industries. But first, we have to think about two things that might be really obvious and really confusing. Salt. Why are we talking about salt? Right? There is nothing more inexpensive in the supermarket than salt. There's nothing interesting that you might say about salt. What can salt teach us? It's really important to know that salt was at one time more valuable than gold in the world. In fact, if you've heard the expression, you're worth your weight in gold, it actually used to be you're worth your weight in salt. If you go to the Tower of London and you see the crown jewels in England, besides the orb and the scepter and all these colonial and imperial symbols, there's a small cup, a small dish. That dish was for salt that the monarch could put on the table because the monarch was the monarch. So salt has been very important in history. It's something to keep in mind as we talk about this today. Otherwise, it makes no sense. The second thing that's important is to think about what technology is. Technology is any human use of ingenuity to manipulate the environment. So salt occurs naturally, it turns, everywhere in the world. It turns out salt is occurring everywhere, but it's occurring naturally. Humans, on the other hand, have been manipulating the environment to increase the production of salt because salt is so valuable and so important for human life, for animal life. So it's really important to think of technology as any manipulation. Now, I want to show you that salt is everywhere, right? So I just wanted to show you things just by simply Googling salt. You can see that there's salt flats all over the world, Argentina, California. These are the spectacular salt sites, salt flats all over the world. So salt is naturally occurring all over the world. You probably have seen salt sites near you or in your travels. So there's salt everywhere. This is what we know. What I want to talk to you today, though, is about ongoing, not extinct, but ongoing industry, salt industry all over Africa. And I thought I could just start with this big place in Tunisia, in the Sahara. So if we zoom down into Tunisia, Sahara, you'll see this salt site, this desert. These are salt flats. This is salt occurring naturally in the desert. And as you probably have seen somewhere in your travels, the way that they harvest that salt is by cutting bricks of it, cutting sheets of it, hanging it over the backs of a camel and walking it to trading sites. So you see this is salt set up and cut into slabs, tied into bundles that could fall over the back of a camel and carried out. This is you can see them breaking the salt. That's in Ethiopia. So we can see that this is something that we are familiar with, is the simple breaking of salt from its naturally occurring place, putting it on a camel and walking it to market. That's technology for sure. I want to show you also two particular sites of salt production in Uganda. And this is a lake called Katwe. It's a naturally occurring crater lake caused by volcanic eruption a million years ago, and which has created a puddle, basically a large puddle on the Earth's surface, which is fed by a saline stream. Now that's natural salt. And what we know is that the feeding of this stream in the center is a naturally occurring tuft of salt that comes into the center of this lake. And traditionally, it's been spoken over the past thousands of years that naturally occurring salt in the center of the lake would be given to the king. And that sort of salt might resemble salt you might have on your table now, this fine crystal salt. If we keep only in our minds fine crystal salt as the definition of salt, we will lose understanding of what African technology is doing with salt, ongoing to this day. There are many, many types of salt, many, many grades of salt, many, many uses, industrial and consumption uses of salt. And so this table salt, this fine grain table salt, is just one type and has come to dominate our ideas of what salt is. But when you go to Katwe, they have many words for salt. It's not just that one omunyo, which might be that one word for that crystal salt. Interestingly, since we are in India, Ugandan technologies have been producing for thousands of years many types of salt. But when Indian traders came in the 20th century, for the most part, to set up little shops and work small local economy in Uganda, they sold imported salt from Arabia. And interestingly, although this was salt from Arabia, it has come to be known in Uganda as Kihindi salt, the salt of Indians. So even though it's not from India, that sort of salt, to be distinguished from the local salt, has been called Kihindi salt. So I thought that might be something you might find interesting. So besides this naturally occurring salt in the center, which people would break and give to the king, they began to mine and manipulate the environment to produce multiple kinds of salt. You see, one of the things they developed was salt pans. These are made from walls made of mud and reed, which concentrates one little area of saline water, which then increases the production of salt, makes it go faster. So this is a technological innovation to take a naturally occurring substance and cause it to increase for market purposes, for economic reasons, right? So this is one grade of salt. And this type of salt is mined by women who, you can see they have pathways among these. And women will get into these salt pans with a hoe, the same type of hoe they use to hoe the ground. And they will rake the salt off the bottom, bring it up in small pans, wash it with their feet over and over in water until it is edible for sort of grade 2 salt, which you could use to cook. They like it for cooking greens, various types of meat, and also for animals uses, industrial uses. That's a grade 2 salt, which is not that fine crystal you might know from your table, but also edible and very important. So you see this. See, these women have pulled this salt up, they're washing it. And eventually we'll get to this level. So this, you'll see the center of the Lake Katwe is still forming naturally salt on the bottom of the lake. And men will go to the center of the lake. It's not really a lake. It's a puddle. It's a shallow puddle. It's 5 feet deep. You can walk all the way across. And they will slam iron stakes down into that bottom of the puddle and pull up large cakes of salt. And they will float them to the this is the large cakes of salt, which they will float to the edge. And those cakes of salt, grade 3, will be sold for industrial and animal consumption purposes. So that is a naturally occurring thing. The technology used there is mining it out and floating it in and then marketing it. And then of course, by pulling it up off the floor, they increase the likelihood of that more will form, because this is a constantly forming salt site. So you can see that them showing visitors how this is done. The other way that salt is harvested from Katwe is because this is really not water. It's a saline solution. It looks like a lake, but it's really a very, very thick brine. Is they place fencing around the edges where wind will blow crystallized salt off the surface of the liquid into fencing, which they can then harvest from the fencing, and turns into that. It actually is, in fact, that kind of crystal salt you might have on your table, that Kihindi It resembles that Kihindi salt. And let me show you a photo from Senegal, which is a similar thing that they're in a rose lake in Senegal. That is red water. The salt forms that color. So this is not really water. This is a saline solution that this man is working in. And they cover their bodies with a certain oil to protect their skin from this salt. It's very, very bad for you. They have shorter lifespans, people that work this industry. But you can see the metal rod he has in his hand, which he will use to slam down into the bottom of the lake to break these large plates up. So that's Katwe, and the various ways Katwe is in harvesting the environment. You can see that mostly women are doing this kind of work because it resembles farming. And in Africa, women are the farmers. And this really resembles farming and harvesting in industrial ways. So you see a lot of women working and also owning these salt pans. Now I'd like to take you, let me show you first where we are. I'd like to take you back to a map and show you where in the world we are so you can understand. So I'm going to take you back to Google Maps and take you to Lake Katwe so you can just see. This is the lake from Google, from the Google satellite photo. And you can see that there's a village associated with it. And as I zoom out, you can see that it is by the large lake there in Western Uganda. There's Lake Victoria, which you might be familiar with in Central Uganda. And then as I pull out, you can see how close we are to the Indian Ocean and the Indian Ocean world, but it's what we call the Great Lakes region. These are the Great Lakes region of Uganda. Now I'd like to take you a little further north to another lake, near another lake, was a place called Kibiro, which is also a salt site. Very interesting and unusual salt production. I want to show you. Let me zoom you out to show you where we are. And so this is another large lake in the Great Lakes region in Uganda, currently in Uganda. It's very close to the border with Congo. And so let me show you how close it is. Right there on the edge, there's a large escarpment, which you can see where these trees are, and you walk down an escarpment, you're basically on a very bare shore of this lake. So you can see the homes that people live in, because this is an ongoing industry. But this is not a salt lake. Interestingly, this is salt gardens. And this is a woman's industry. There are two types of technology employed in Kibiro salt mining. One is gardening, where they literally garden the salt out of the soil. And the second is the kitchen, where inside of very hot kitchens, they process the salt from the soil into a brine and drip it into these cones that they then carry, men then carry out of the village into the market. So it's a garden, they're gardens, and women own these gardens, they own the production and they own the profits. So this is one of the most female dominated economies and social structures that I've ever encountered. Women are in charge. And when men marry a woman, they are basically that woman's servant who will work for that woman, because that woman is producing the salt, producing the income for the household and for the village. It's a very interesting place. And the important thing is that I wanted to take you first globally and show you that this is happening all over the world, right? Salt is coming up out of the ground and out of the water all over the world. But that it's ongoing industry in Katwe. This is happening today as we speak. People are mining salt out of the gardens, out of the salt pans in Katwe. And as we speak, women are producing salt out of gardens in Kibiro. The historiography will tell you that as soon as white people arrived in Africa, as soon as the Indians brought their Kihindi salt, that ended salt production in Africa. That the local industry died. Didn't die, it's ongoing. People enjoy all of these types of salt. They enjoy the new types of salt brought in by Indian traders very much. And they also enjoy the salt. Salt is what we call an insatiable need. There will never be enough types of salt. There will never be too many types. you can't edge out any kind of salt with a new salt, they will simply add it to their menu of salts. Salt is something humans crave, love, and are addicted to, and you can never have enough salt. So what I wanted to draw your attention to is that African people have been manipulating their environment to increase the production of salt in many, many forms for thousands of years. As was mentioned in a previous panel, we talk about documentation, right? We don't have a lot of documentation, obviously, from prehistoric and from pre-colonial history, but we do know from archaeology and from local historical knowledge that this has been going on for thousands of years. And so I wanted to draw your attention to that this ongoing industry, this ongoing use of ancient technology all over the world, but especially in this case, in these two sites in Western Uganda.
Thank you very much, Professor Barrett Gaines. Very interesting presentation. And I believe Professor Rai is trying to say something, so I'll give the podium to him.
One point of clarification. In the first slide of Professor Barrett Gaines, the chairperson, the name of the chairperson was Jagdish Rai. Actually, the chairperson is Professor Narendra Rustagi.
That's all right, Professor Rai. You are the convener, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, and I also request, if possible, if you can switch camera towards audience and once in a while, so that would be good as well. Because most of the audience is in that hall where you are sitting.
Actually, we are live on a Facebook, sir. We do not allow others to join on a Zoom platform because
that is true.
Provide some glitches. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. I know. Thank you.
Vaishali.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to invite our next esteemed speaker, Mr. Dr. Alok Srivastava, sir. Welcome, sir. And I would ask my co-host Rahul to introduce him.
Dr. Alok Srivastava, based in Washington, D.C. since 1980, works as a chief engineer of air traffic control systems development with a very large U.S. high-tech corporation. He is an executive member of Association for Computing Machinery, ACM, and managing editor of an ACM research journal. He is secretary of an ISO Computer Science Working Group and an expert panelist with the National Science Foundation, a prominent community leader associated with the several faith-based organizations, including serving as a director of American Hindu Coalition, director Hindu Jain Temples Association, trustee of largest Hindu temple in Virginia, and director Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, with 400 religious organizations members of it. Over to you, sir.
Okay, namaskar everyone. I am Alok Srivastava, and I thought my presentation is tomorrow on Saturday morning. That's what happened, time difference between US and over there. So today I'm working too, but luckily Professor Rai called me. So I was still in my bedroom and I'm still in the bedroom. That's where I work. So please ignore my furniture other in the background. I will share my slides now, so you will not see me. And you have, I don't know how the other presentation went. Mine is not on the building architecture or sewer lines and other things, is very high level. And because I have a unique privilege to work as a scientist, as an engineer, as well as with many faith-based, Hindu faith-based organizations. So I learned from the science community and also from different swamis and visitors at the temple. And as I see what the Hindu methodology taught me now, how those things are fitting into the current science and physics, how those are emerging, so that's very much with the match with the what's written in our sculptures and all that. So now I will share my slides, which were actually still a draft because I thought it's tomorrow. So I will transfer into the PowerPoint, but it's still in the Word, no much graphics, no color. So it's a very basic slide. So let's start sharing it. So you have already seen the abstract of my talk, which I put at that time in a hurry. And the theme is that the ancient science and technology were very advanced as shown by various landmarks all over the world and also as described in the sculpture. Unfortunately, due to not sharing or passing to the next generation and documenting in the knowledge due to only verbal media availability, such wisdom got lost. Unfortunately, invaders also destroy the knowledge institution libraries to dominate their specific religion and region and to restrict the progress. So myself will give a few examples of such incidences, technology, and what may still be uncovered based on what I think on my knowledge is in sculptures, and because I'm with the several organization, I cannot use my company's name because I have to get permission from there with very lengthy process with a defense company. So I'm using American Hindu Coalition as one of my association. Can you see my screen? Can you all see my
Yeah,
screen?
we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So as I say, the icons of advanced ancient sciences are and very visible are the buildings and the architecture, those monuments and those things, pyramids and all that. Then there are languages written in those buildings also. If you visit the Egypt and those, they also have those writings over there, which are very hard to manipulate, read, but people were able to do. And they use the sign languages, birds and all that, and rotary stone, you may have heard about that. And because those buildings architecture have a long life, then you can see that. And for Hindu culture and our ancient, you can see Angkor Wat, which is almost 1100 years old, such a large complex. Then Chola dynasty, of course, the Egypt and the Greece, Maya dynasty in Mexico and all that. So those are based on showing our advanced science, mostly in the architecture and building. But there are other sources of all that. And first is those our sacred books. And those are very popular one of religious books are Ramayana and Gita. Then sculptures are Veda and Upanishad. And those were verbally passed on. And so it goes by the generation and the family, the next generation, children, some they have to memorize. And some may have hard coded or something on the stone is embedded in the structure. Those are the sources. But then again, as I said, the knowledge got lost at the sculpture destroyed and due to poor maintenance and all that. Muslim invaders, they invaded, and institutions like Nalanda and all that, those were burned and destroyed because they thought that their faith is much more advanced and they have a better knowledge and those things. So they burned that and they wanted to impose that kind of knowledge and all that. And also I will blame that our gurus, and they were not sharing the knowledge, and knowledge got lost because they thought, even in the recent time, that it will be used, can be used for the commercial purposes and all that, and that's not the intention of that knowledge. So that's what happened to our icons of the advanced science. Okay, so very first thing, the concept and visualization. Many of you know, or you can search that about the invisible ships phenomena. I don't know how many of you know that. So what happened? The tribal people in America and Australia, those Red Indians and all that, when the ship of Columbus and all that, they came to the shore because they never imagined, they never thought of there is something exist like a ship which can float on the water. They never recognized that, their mind was not able to register that, and they were able to sail all the way up to the shore, and they even landed on the land, and then they realized something on that, and that's is a lot of research going on, is a psychological, is a mental thing. And unless you visualize something, you cannot believe in that, that's what happened. And there's a lot of literature available on the invisible ships ships phenomena. And same thing happened in Australia with Captain Cook and Magellan, Christopher Columbus, South Africa. They all, those tribal people were not able to see the ships because it was never registered in their mind. They never know. But our Hindu methodology or Asian, we were quite advanced. And as we can say from Ramayana and all that, there was a concept of aircraft and all that, Pushpak. So they were able to believe, and a lot of rishis and those, they developed that. And for the human, for us to know about those, we have a very limited spectrum and our sense, for the human. Even the dogs and birds, they have much wider spectrum of these senses. I work with the air traffic control, and there's a big problem of the birds at the runway, so that can suck into the engines. So there was a research happened, and they find out when there is some fear or something, then the birds and ducks make a very unique noise, which cannot be heard by the human ears, but is there. So they registered that, and they were able to generate and replicate that. So when there are birds and those things, they just turn on that device and they all run away, and nobody sees that, nobody hear that, So our senses are also very, very limited. That's why many advanced engineering and science we were not able to recognize. So let's see how this thing progresses, what was in the past and how this happened. We all hear in the medical sciences about the Love and Kush incident, that Mother Sita was in the forest. She never had the time or the opportunity to live with the Ram, but the Love and Kush were born. Nobody believed in that till recently that it is possible. Same thing you heard about the Mahabharata, the Karn, he was a son of Kunti and the son of a son, Surya. Same thing, Kaurav, mother Gandhari had 100 sons. And if you see the Mahabharata war, if it takes 1 year to produce one child, it must have taken the 100 years. And the age difference during the Mahabharata, those all the Kauravas were pretty young, pretty same age group size, So that means it's not possible that the age difference was at least a minimum of 100 years between the eldest and the younger. So that means that there must be some other technology for that to produce the child and all that. But it was in the scripture. Same way, the Mother Mary, which is the Catholics believe that she was a Virgin Mary. And so now let's see how that fits in modern science. Today, if you see in 100 years, there are many women came forward, hundreds of women, that they became pregnant, and they never had any physical relationship. So there was some research happened, lot of, how that possible and those things, and they find out that in women's sweat, in pasine mein, there are some materials and minerals which are enough to make a woman pregnant. So this was indirectly in our sculpture, but nobody believed. But now this is happened, and because from there, if you can envision that, that this is possible, only then you can do that research, and that happened. And recently, you can see that China and Netherlands, they have developed the artificial wombs where the women are not willing to bear the child for 9 months. They can put in there, and child will develop in 9 months in the artificial womb naturally, and they can give a birth to that. This is a very known science fact now, and you can search on that. Even those pictures of labs came, where there are artificial wombs, natural, based on artificial intelligence, and where the kids are growing in the stomach over there. So I believe, as my limited knowledge on those things, that was always there, and that's what happened in the ancient time, which the Valmiki ji was a great scientist, and others, they were able to create the Love and Kush, and same way Kunti and Kaurav and Gandhari. similarly, in the medical science, we all know now the natural, not the artificial, but the natural body parts are being developed and able to transport. We'll learn in our methodology, Lord Ganesha is the head of elephant. But many Hindus, even us, don't believe that that's scientifically possible and those things. But if you see now that, and similarly, the Greeks, if you visit the Greece and those things, you know, there were always two kind of human over there. One you see normal human, and one on the right side, I put the picture with the 4 legs and the hand, and they both existed. Greeks were so advanced in the genetic technology that they were able to create that kind of creature. So the mobility will be fast and other things, you know, so both existed, but then there was a war between them, and it's documented in Greece. If you visit the Greece, Athens and all their museum, that then the normal humans with the 2 legs, they succeeded and other got killed, but this happened. So in modern science, we all know about the stem cell technology. Same concept of stem cell technologies, where and the sub part of those technology are human, animal, chimeras. You know, you can Google and that, and in which human body parts like a ear and all that, that can be transplanted on a pig on and the rats and all that, and it will multiply, and those multiplied or replicated ear and all that can be replanted ones who don't have the ear or got lost due to some accident on something. So the body part transmission is currently happening in the current science, but it was indirectly described in our sculptures before. It was in the Greek also. And we all know about the heart transplant and all that. That's also basically that, but the heart is actually not grown, it's just the transplant. But the growing the body parts is a new technology, and is getting quite popular. And then the cartilage framework is to artificially develop some proteins or something that enhances the ability to resist to disease and bone problems and all that. So that was I was thinking, you know, as whatever was in our sculptures in the art, now this all technology is becoming possible, is coming up. Same thing about 60-70 years, we discovered the chromosome, and as we all know, there are 23 pairs of chromosome X and Y. So there are total 46 chromosomes, 23 pair X and Y. And if you see those chromosomes, those X and Y, the monkeys, chimpanzees, and all that, they have 80 to 90% of common genes, you know, common X and Y. The only thing which distinguishes between a humans and the others is a very certain percentage of the genes and the chromosome. Then we hear in Ramayana that Lord Rama was able to train or change the apes, you know, monkeys and all that, to behave like a human. But now we see that there are only few genes that needs to be edited, needs to be corrected, and the other creatures can work and think like a human. So that's how it fits from our past, what's written in the sculptures into the current science, ancient technology, ancient knowledge, and the current science. And this is all possible due to genetic engineering. Our previous speaker talks about the DNA commonalities and all that. And if you see the pyramids and in Egypt and the Mayan culture, those Mayan monuments in Mexico and those things, it was very interesting to find that the commonality within the Mayan people, when they search, you know, and they interestingly, they found that this matches with the Egyptian people. And I was very surprised to know that Egyptians who built the pyramid, actually there was Somalian, there was slightly smaller built. If you see the mummies in Egypt, I've seen many, and they are not a normal size, they are a smaller size, and so do the Mayan people. And it is very hard 5,000 years back, it can't be imagined that the land was connected from the north, from Alaska to the Europe and those things. I don't think that was many years back. So I was thinking, I was very surprised how the Egyptians and Mayans DNAs are the closest one. So there is quite possibility, and that's when you visit the Egypt and the pyramid, although they're all a kind of theory that the rocks, they slide through the mud and the people one, but people also believe that the Egyptians technology science was very advanced, and they were able to develop a technology of the anti-gravitational force. So using that, they can lift those stones and put on that. And that's the only way they used to travel from the Egypt up to the Mexico and all that, because the Atlantic is very wide and there was no land connection and the ships were very small. So they must have developed some way to travel and to build the pyramid. That quite possible with the anti-gravitational force. Gene editing is a very emerging field now. And if you see about the Ayurveda and the Ashwini Kumar, the ultimate Ved who came, also the reference of Sanjeevani in the Ramayana. So personally, I believe Ayurveda and Ashwini Kumar, they were the expert of the gene editing technology, making specific changes to the DNA, and that means adding, removing, or altering the DNA, which is basically a proteins in there into that. And that is also possible in animals, plant, and human. And for the research, you can only think about that. Imagine if you go back and see that in the Hindu sculptures, the reference of Ayurveda, Sanjeevani, there was a possibility mentioned that person can be cured forever. So that is only possible through the DNA technology. Similarly, Hindu sculptures, we also believe there is a life in the vegetation too. Unless you believe in that, you cannot uncover or find or do the research in that field. I don't know many of you know about that. There was Devara Baba, very famous in Mathura, and Rajiv Gandhi was the prime minister, and he was expected to visit Devara Baba, and he has to come by a helicopter, and to land the helicopter in his ashram, they have to cut some trees and those things. So when they come to cut the tree, the Devara Baba is very old, maybe 150 years old. He screamed and said, no, not to cut that, because tomorrow that tree will ask to me, what was my mistake, why you cutted me. So anyway, that program got cancelled, so there was no need to land the helicopter, and the tree survived. And so many of us know about Dr. Jagdish Basu. Many of you are the science student and those things. Jagdish Basu was the first one who said there is a life in the vegetation, the life in the vegetables, trees, and all that. But he was not able to prove that, and so that field died, and nobody, the science committee in Europe, and took a notice of that. But our Hindu mythology always says that there is a life in the river, in the mountain, vegetation, air, sky, fire. They all have a life. And just about 3 months back, I was reading an article. There was a research that the trees and vegetation, they have a social life. They do the colonization. They have a social behavior. They protect, and they don't allow other vegetation and vegetable to grow their internal fright, and they grow within themselves, and that has been proven now. So now I go back and think about, same thing Dr. Jagdish Basu said, but nobody believed that at that time. But hopefully that research will continue, and we are able to prove that the vegetation, they have the life and they have a social life too. So also, in my opinion, to interface with because we are still at the limit of the science and more toward the spirituality, and that gap will eliminate soon, and I will show in later slides how that is possible. And one is the interface, and I believe that interface is through the eyes. I don't know, you heard about the incident. Swami Vivekanand was kept in an enclosure, or it was an open enclosure, wide one, and there was a wide lion was in there, and just to prove the point, they kept the lion open, and the lion came and tried to attack, and there was a eye contact between Vivekanand and that wild charged lion, and some communication happened, and the lion lay down over there and became calm. So we have not reached up to that technologies, but we have to imagine it. Only then we will be able to develop that technology. That's what I said in the very beginning, the ship incident, what happened. So if we believe in that, then there will be research and will uncover that field. It is already indirectly in the science of hypnosis, which is in Hindu scriptures too, and in Hindi we called it sammohan, which is quite used, where you control the mind. And also under that, there is a past life regression. We are the one Hindus who believe the life after death, and through that technology of hypnosis, sometime that practitioner or the expert can take you back to the past life, and you can tell about that. Many children who are born, they can tell where they were in the previous life, and slowly that memory get erased, but initially in the first few years they can tell. So there is something in the hypnosis science which currently science is not able to prove or develop, but it will come sooner, about the past life regression, which is already a field in the human psychology. Body transformation and life after death. That's is a well-known fact in our sculptures. We believe in that. And recently, the research is uncovered that the brain is alive 1 hour, at least 1 hour after that, even there is no heartbeat. So if the heartbeat is stopped, not to assume that the person is dead, because maybe heart is not pumping, but the brain, the nerve system, the electromagnetic neural network, the microvolt current which forms the brain, transmit the data, and those things still remain active at least for 1 hour. That has been proven now. And brain cells, they function using a rapid electrical impulses. That's how the neuroscience is. There's a lot of research going on, and that part of the human body actually communicates with the outside world, through the space and all that. So it's very much possible that the concept of Atma and those things, now these neuroscience is developing. It's very similar to computer. When we have a laptop and we turn off, it does not, we just press the button, it will go off. It will take few seconds, it depends upon the speed. That's what it wraps up, and that's what the brain wraps up when it dies, to report the final findings, final summaries, and those things to report to the upper level, to divinity. So unless we believe in those Hindu methodology and those things, that there is such thing exist, you cannot proceed to do the research on that, you have to have some base to believe in that. In many of us, we believe in Kaya Kalp, and that it still exists and possible. There are Swamis in Himalayas who can transform in their body into the next body, Swami. Many of you have heard about the Mahesh Yogi. Mahesh Yogi ji was the secretary of Swami Brahmananda. Mahesh Yogi was a science graduate of Allahabad University, is a physics background. And Swami Brahmananda was able to do that. And it is assumed that he gave that knowledge to Mahesh Yogi, but Mahesh Yogi never gave to his student and transfer, although the Mahesh Yogi Institute in Iowa, in USC, and many physics head of department scientists, they camp over there, they sat with Mahesh Yogi, but Mahesh Yogi never disclosed that. That was one of the reasons our technology and science was never conveyed to the next generation. And you all know, we believe in life afterwards, and the Dalai Lama is a Buddhist methodology. Dalai Lama has already predicted where he will born, his next birth, and where. So that's already known, and that child, he said, is in China somewhere. And similarly, the ancient Greeks were also capable to talking to departed souls through the mirror reflection. So that's the technology they develop, and that gives an indication that optical science, optics, may have a possibility to communicate with those invisible bodies and those things. So we believe in that, and that's what the ancient science is. One day it will be covered. Egyptians, their mummies concept was also based on the life afterward. That's why they kept so much material stuff and those things, so the soul can enjoy the comfortable life into the next their life. All the religion is not just the Hindu, directly or indirectly, now they believe that there is a life after the death. For Islam, for Muslims, this is a Shab-e Barat. That's the night when all the bodies, all the souls comes out of the grave. Similarly, for the Christians, it's called the Day of Judgment. Jews, they call it Shul. So based on Hindus, now every faith believes there is a life after the death, and it's very well documented in the Hindu sculpture, our ancient science. And where even there is no religion in some of the countries, and just the tribes, in Africa and all that, they also believe that there is a life after death. So this is all my things were on body transformation, life and death. Similarly, I believe I was just looking into the other presentation, and the Brigadier Singh also touched on this field about the universe, God, and astronomy. It is very well in our ancient knowledge, and current, it just they prove that. Currently, we believe what the Einstein said, and Einstein said this whole science is that speed of the light is the speed of the light is the limit of how fast you can go. There is no speed possible below the speed of light, which is 300,000 kilometer per second. So that's the limit of current physics, whatever the science is, the speed of the light. And black holes are the one, they're so dim that even the light cannot pass. So the light bends through that and passes through that. It's all our physics students, science students, they know that. And I talked with some Swamis over here, and they said that's where the God lives. God lives in the black hole, and that's how the God has protected himself, so that nobody can penetrate and know about his way, how he's doing the things. So black holes may be the place, but more research needs to be done. Then in Ramayana and in Gita, we have a concept of Vishnu ji, and he is carrying a Sudarshan Chakra that was given to him. That's how he controlled the nature. And you see all the pictures, new pictures from the Webb telescope and Halley's telescope. This on the right hand side, that's how the universe is. So universe is rotating. If it is rotating inward, it called the, in the physics there is equation, it's called curl, and it is rotating outward is the diversion of that. So that's how the nature is created at per our Hindu sculpture, and that has now is proven by the all the space technologies and all that. And if you see in Vishnu's hand, that's the chakra that reflects the nature and how he control the universe. You can do that. And Aryabhat, Varamir, Bhaskar, they all, even the NASA Hubble and James telescope, they confirm that. So it's already in the what Aryabhat wrote, what Varamir wrote, Bhaskar wrote in our ancient science, and it's proven by NASA through his spacecraft, Hubble and James. Many of you know about the Indian scientist Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. He is of Indian origin, but he was in University of Chicago, so he was a US citizen, and because the India does not allow dual citizenship, so he remained so the Nobel Prize got credited to USA by although it was by Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. He was a Brahmin family, and he studied a lot the astronomy and all that, and that's how he came up with the structure and the evolution of planets. So what I'm trying to show over here, that whatever over there now slowly fitting into the pieces. Science is proving that, and these Nobel laureates are the examples of that. So Subramaniam Chandrasekhar, he credited his research on which he got the Nobel Prize about the life, and when these planets, galaxies, the universe was formed. So Subramanian Chandrasekhar ji got the Nobel Prize, but he wrote in his books and those things that I got the idea, I learned from the Hindu sculpture. Same way, there are 3 Japanese origin scientists. They got the Nobel Prize also on cosmic mystery. One remained in Japan, Japanese, other 2 migrated. So they became the US citizen, but although they were all of the Japanese origin, so they together, they came with the cosmic mystery theory. You can search on internet and all that. They also learned many things what's in our sculpture about the astronomy and all that. And they said and that theory called CP violation theory, you can search on that. What they said, there was only one energy source in the beginning, the one energy, and periodically they were converting left and right, one time negative energy, one time positive energy, sometimes they call it black energy and white energy. So that periodic change from one side to another one time, that was not perfect. Although it was almost 100% perfect, but one time that was not perfect, or maybe 1% of the positive energy was not able to convert into the negative energy, and that energy converted into the mass, which is a very famous Einstein theory also, E is equal to mc square, and that mass converted into what we see into the universe, and that's how all the planets and all these things were formed, and that was so convincing, that thing, that 3 of those, they got the Nobel Prize of physics few years back. So what I'm point I'm trying to say over there, that always we believe that the God created the universe, and that's how it was created. He was just a source of infinite energy, and one time he released some part of that. That's how the universe is found. We also, in that astronomy, I don't know the other presenter have made, very famous Indian scientist, from the Bengal. Actually, at that time, the Bangladesh was part of India, so he was in Dhaka. He was a professor in Dhaka, Satyendra Bose, and he proposed a particle called bosons. And many of you may have heard about the bosons. And his paper with Larry Hicks is a very famous paper on the Higgs boson theory. That's why he came with a new particle called boson. And Nobel Prize only comes when something can be proven in the lab, it gets detected, then they give the Nobel Prize. So the CERN collider in Geneva is a very large one. That's why I had all the particle research work going on for the collision and all that. So they able to detect the boson particle. Yes, that happened. Unfortunately, by that time, Satyendra Bose died, but luckily the Larry Higgins survived. So Larry Higgins got the Nobel Prize. Maybe the just was waiting for that. After getting the Nobel Prize, he died too. So that's what the modern science detected, that the God do their work, what their way of doing is by using the bosons. Bosons are a particle. And if you see most of the Hindu gods picture, they have a hand, and from the rays coming from the hand over there, I was not able to find a better picture. So those rays are nothing, but those are the bosons, and those are proven in the lab, and it detected over here. Next thing in the science is, because we are talking, the conference is on ancient knowledge and the technology, is the interplanetary movement. And current physics, we all know that no speed velocity is possible faster than the speed of light, which is 300,000 kilometers per second. But there are possibilities that that barrier will be break, and then the interplanetary movement will happen. And that's exactly the same thing what the Hindu methodology says, that the Naradji and other were going on different planets, getting the instructions and those things. Interplanetary movement is very common in the Hindu philosophy, in Hindu methodology, and in other religion too. And so the people were doubting, that it really possible, although some Professor Sudarshan suggested that some particles can move faster than that, but was never proven. But if you see, recently, it just happened a year back, one Mexican scientist proposed, and DARPA is a US agency of defense research. And Defense Research Laboratory were doing something else, and my company is part of that. We are also a DARPA researcher. They incidentally found something, that object traveled faster than the light speed of light, and that called warp bubble. You can Google it, you can search it. So warp bubble is a very recent discovery, just happened maybe a few months back or year back. Now that the travel or the speed, physical speed of faster than light is possible. So then, therefore, I hope there will be space-time travel will be possible. And this is the picture of the warp bubble, what they detected into the lab, and it's very much a reality now. Next field where I see the research and the link with the ancient technology and all that is the solar science and the invisibility. I mentioned earlier that the Karna was the son of Kunti, and that is not a very old story. That's only a 5,000 years back. And almost the same time, the Mohenjo-daro Indus Valley civilization is also 5,000 years back. So there must be something in sun's waves, sun's rays that can do lots of other things other than what we use as a solar energy right now for the renewable energy field. There are also many use of that cosmic energy. Swami Vishuddhanand, who was with the part of the Ramakrishna mission, and at the same time when the Vivekanand was there, he was the expert of Surya Vigyan, solar science. And many people witness, and it is documented in the book, that he was able to alive a dead bird. The bird was dead, but he used the solar energy or something, solar waves, and the bird was alive. He was able to create many fragrances. So there are a lot more possibilities, and it is now seen by our modern time and written in the ancient time that's possible. And I gave you the example. And if you see indirectly, all internet communication right now is based on the fiber optics, because copper wire cannot do that. And fiber optics is nothing but use of the pulses of the light. If you see, unfortunately, Narendra Kapani, he was also an Indian scientist at in New York. He died, so he cannot get the Nobel Prize. But the fiber optics, actually, he's the main person who uncovered the possibility of fiber optics, where you can use the pulses of light for data communication. Our most of the internet currently based on the fiber optics. Also, because I go very regularly to National Science Foundation, which is the premier government agency in USA for all the science and technology research. They claim that their research work has resulted into 220 Nobel Prize. You can see how important that agency is, and that's here in Washington. And in the entrance, that board is, that we are the instrumental of 220 Nobel Prizes. I go sometime to review the proposal they have submitted, which one to fund. So although this was not my field, but I overheard that there is a proposal from MIT, which is funded by NSF, and that a object can be seen at two places at the same time, which is current thinking, current science, current physics is not possible. But then again, we have to develop that concept of the ship. We have to envision to think about that, and so the research is going on. How is that possible, that the object is in two places at the same exactly time? That's in quantum state. So right now, that object is very small, but sooner as it develops, there are large objects, or one day maybe human can be seen at two or multiple places at the same time. And then again, that means it can lead to the possibility of being invisible. And then again, if we are go our ancient science, our technology, that's always written very well, that concept of being a adrish. That's how most of the spiritual bodies, they travel, and so all they become adrish. That like a warp bubble, that also going to be a very near possibility in to become adrish or be seen at the two places at the same time. That's called quantum superposition. That's the name of the emerging field. There's not much available right now because it has a military use, so it's very highly classified. But quantum superposition is something countries in US and China that are working on that. So when we talked about superposition or being adrish, Swami Adbhutanand, he was also with the Ramakrishna mission. I have his book on my plate. He was a great yogi, and Netaji Subhash and Bose learned from him how to become invisible, and that at that time his camp was in Bharatpur in Rajasthan, and that's why Swami Adbhutanandji trained him to Netaji how to become invisible. And many, they believe that the knowledge he used to elude the British, because it was very difficult to climb on a plane in Calcutta and escape from India. And because he was capable of that, being invisible, I also believe in a theory that such person cannot die in a plane crash, so he might have survived. So that is not very long time ago, but that's now I'm seeing that MIT research on that thing, that is also a possibility now of to be invisible. Then our ancient knowledge also tells about the time manipulation, space travel, and the mantras. We all know that we all are science students. There's only 4 dimensions of the space: X, Y, Z, and the time. We have a control on X, Y, Z that can go on faster velocity, less in different direction, but cannot accelerate or deaccelerate the rate of time. Time is still, we have no control on that, and that's the limit of the current science right now, current physics. And it's co-joined with the speed of light, because the maximum speed currently possible and imagined is only 300,000 kilometers per second. So if somehow you can go faster than that, then you are ahead of time. Also, very interestingly, I met one Swami over here, and I also talked about him that time. And so he interestingly said that there are 7 time windows in the Earth atmosphere. There are 7 patches, and those are not very big. I mean, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer or only. And if some object or flight escape through those 7 windows, it may elope the time impact, the gateway, you know. How that will be uncovered, how is that possible, is still a topic of research in the future. But some people, they know about that, they have invisible that there is some windows in the atmosphere through which time travel is possible. We all know about heard about the Kal Chakra, wheel of time, time manipulation. And wheel of time, Kal Chakra, refers to the cycles of the planets. And this conference is happening in Banaras. Maybe Jagdish Rai ji may be familiar with the Kaviraj Gopinath ji. Gopinath ji was from Banaras. He was the librarian, and then later he was the vice chancellor of either Kashi Vidyapeeth or Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya. So there is a place, Gyanganj, in Shambhala in Tibet, and that's where they are saying that the Kal Chakra, the time machine that exists, and it's also a land of immortals, and from there the time can be controlled. And Gopinath Kaviraj ji has written several books, and he himself have visited that. But again, because that, and that's the picture on the right, you are seeing that the Dalai Lama is trying to read something, that's Kal Chakra, some related to something Kal Chakra in there. That's how he predicted through that where he's going to be born next, and that. So Kal Chakra, manipulating time, is also a possibility in the future by our ancient science. And I gave you example of warp bubble, which had made it possible. There's a possibility of that. Another thing, last thing I want to touch with you is quantum computing, and that's the very emerging field right now. All our current computer science or hardware is based on the binary computer system, either 0 or 1. So the a state can only be either in 1 or 0.
बस
But
आता हूँ ये प्रेजेंटेशन सुन रहा था मैंने कहा
KK Singh sir, please mute yourself.
अच्छा
Can somebody mute him?
सीख रही हो या क्या कर रही हो
Can you
नहीं,
please
वीडियो
mute
में
Dr.
कैसे
Singh?
बनना है? अच्छा तो वही है कि टोस्ट सेक करके उसमें
Ashok ji, Alok ji, you are the host. Can you mute him?
हाँ मैं आगे तुम सेक दो मैं आगे बना देता हूँ
Thank you. Yeah, please continue, Alok ji. Alok ji, you are on mute. Alok ji,
Fine.
please unmute yourself.
now, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, please
So the
wrap up.
current-
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
current computer science is based on the binary system 1 and 0. So it can either be on 1 and 0. But quantum computing is new field where that a qubit can be simultaneously in a 1 or 0 state. So this develops an infinite computer possibility because can be in both. But very interestingly, this research work is going on at the IBM Center in New York, and I have some friends over there. And they told me that they have developed the prototype, but very interestingly, they found that the state of infinite in dual is very sensitive to the noise, to the voice. And if you see our laptop and those things, no matter how you shout and those things, nothing happened to the chip. But they say in quantum computing is something happening and is very sensitive to noise. If you can control the noise, then is device will be a reality. So that is striking me link, that all our mantras and those things, that's the voice control, and that may be giving indication of sense, that is something linked to that through voice you can control the state, and that's what our mantras were. And mantras can control the universe thing because it's very sensitive to voice, and that infinite quantum computing. And Sanskrit may be the programming language. That's how those mantras were developed, is the coding language. And so quantum computing is another field to be looked and is done. Okay, this is my last slide, and what I'm saying is that our current science and physics actually are based on 4 fundamental forces, and many of you are physicists over here, science student. So the very first one is the gravity, and the weak nuclear forces, strong nuclear forces, weak nuclear forces, that Dr. Abdul Salam of Pakistan got the Nobel Prize. Electromagnetism, these are the 4 known, but there must be a 5th force. That why I think, and that's why and that's the one needs to be uncovered, and that is the ultimate force that can control the universe and those. And there are some indications. They have given a code name X17, and X17 will be the 5th force. I don't know what form it will be. It will be a nuclear based force or physical gravity force and electromagnetic. We heard so much about ancient science in this presentation and the others, but they all were based on either on gravity, or indirectly they may not know the weak nuclear forces or the strong nuclear forces. But I'm very surprised how in thousands of years they were not able to uncover the electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is very simple, the magnets, and between 2 magnets you rotate a coil, it mostly is a copper, and when it rotates, it generates the electricity. Is not a very high-tech thing. All our power plants for electricity, in thermal you use the water gravity power to rotate that coil, so it became the thermal power, hydel power. And in the coal thermal, and in nuclear, the same concept is used to boil the water, and that is steam rotates the coil, that becomes thermal power. So such a simple thing of electromagnetism, why it was not uncovered in our such a long history? Because electromagnetism is the one which revolutionized the world in last 150 years. Our electricity, all our computers, cell phone, everything electric is based on that simple concept. So similarly, maybe it is very open, but we are not able to tap that. And like electromagnetism, the fifth force X17 may be uncovered. So finally, what I'm trying to say, I see the ancient knowledge and I see how the new science is emerging, and those pieces are fitting very well. As we proceed, we saw the medical sciences, we saw the solar, we saw all the other movement, astronomy and all that. So I am hoping that once this quantum computing concept will be available, then our computing power, artificial intelligence, data management will be so increased, we will be able to uncover many new fields. And hopefully this process will accelerate. And fifth force, I believe it is somewhere in our structures, but we are not just able to uncover that. So we focus more. I think it is described somewhere because that science was very advanced on that time. So that's all I have to say. Okay, thank you. You are mute, Rastogi ji.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alok ji. Very interesting presentation. And with that, I think in the interest of time, I would give it back to Vaishali to introduce Dr. Nisha Singh. I believe Dr. Rai is presenting on her behalf. So, Vaishali.
And before that, I would like to say something to Dr. Alok Srivastava. As a physicist, I appreciated it very much. You have connected all the spirituality, all the particles and everything in physics. For your information, Professor G.N. Tiwari, the academic leader of IIT Delhi, is here. He would like to say something to you.
Namaskar, Tiwari ji.
नमस्कार
नमस्कार. So honored that आपने भी समय निकाला मुझे सुनने के लिए.
नहीं
और
नहीं
ये आप ही की
मैंने
शिक्षा है, आप ही ने
ये
पीएचडी कराई थी
हाँ
आईटी में, आप ही का मार्गदर्शन है. हाँ जी.
हाँ ये कॉन्फ्रेंस वही हो रहा है जहाँ पर 2012 में आप यहाँ टिके थे जो है जो
अच्छा,
सुलारिज
अच्छा.
हुआ था गुरु जी का बर्थडे के लिए जो है
हाँ.
और
ओ,
आपने
अच्छा.
जो सबसे पहले तो मैं आपको बधाई देता हूँ कि आप इस तरह का लेक्चर दिए जिसमें कि हर चीज उसमें आ गया जो है धर्म भी आ गया साइंस भी आ गया एडवांस भी आ गया सब थ्योरी नोबल लॉरेट सब आ गए मतलब जो है तो इट इज अ वेरी नाइस लेक्चर इट वाज वेरी नाइस लेक्चर एंड आई होप दैट यू विल कंटिन्यू लाइक दैट तो और अनु वगैरह कैसे हैं और पिताजी
सब लोग ठीक है जी, सब लोग ठीक है.
ठीक ठाक है ना
हाँ, सब
चलिए
ठीक
ठीक
है.
है फिर बाद में बात करेंगे
और धन्यवाद आपकी शिक्षा के लिए. आप ही ने ट्रेंड किया है सब ज्ञान के लिए जो है.
अरे आप शिक्षा के बाद जो शिष्य लोग भी तो अपना आगे बढ़े मतलब जो है ना वो आपने काम किया है जो है और सब ठीक है ना
सब ठीक है जी. हाँ जी.
चलिए ठीक थैंक यू
And moving further for an enlightening session, sir. Our next speaker is Professor Nisha Singh, ma'am. Due to some personal reason, she was not able to attend this conference. So, on behalf of her, I would like to invite Jagdish Rai, sir, to present her presentation.
Firstly, I will introduce Professor Nisha Singh, ma'am. She is an associate professor at Livingston College, Salisbury, North Carolina, US. She holds experience at Quantum School of Business, Roorkee for 1 year as an assistant professor and also an exchange program coordinator at Livingston College, Salisbury, North Carolina, USA. She was head of Department of Business at Livingston College, North Carolina, USA. Over to you, sir.
Slide, please. So due to certain reason, Professor Nisha Singh could not come to deliver the talk, and she requested me to talk about. She sent me the slides, but ideas are her. I may not be able to explain it in the way she could have explained. So next slide, please. The Indian kings, the people, had extreme idealism, and one of the idealism was not to attack any other nation, any other country. And there was emphasis on excellent administration within his kingdom and taking care of the citizens. India had a big empire covering the whole of India, leaving the southern peninsula up to Afghanistan. And they wanted to have the friendship with all the nations. Next slide. So this shows Chandragupta, not Chandragupta, Maurya, Chandragupta Maurya, the Maurya Empire, how vast it was. Only the small peninsula of the south was left, and then it covered the whole of Afghanistan and other areas as well. Next slide, please. See, they had the religious tolerance. Since ages, the Jews here were here, and there was no anything which they could have enmity. The world's second mosque was built in India in the year 629 AD. The first was in Makkah and second was in Kerala. The world's first church was made in India in 57 AD because in Arab world around Jerusalem, they did not allow the church to be made. So they came to India, the two in Kerala, and made the first church and there. And of course, the Jewish temples were existing since ages. So there was a complete harmony between the Christians, the Hindus, the Jains, and Buddhists. And they say they were all living together. Next, please. Of course, the history of the Jews is very old, and they have been living in India and doing their business and all other things. Please, next. Of course, next I have told you about. The next, please. In extreme idealism was not to fight war during night time. Even in Mahabharata and Ramayana, they never fought the war during night time, only daytime. Even during night time, they visited each other and talked about there was complete friendship. Not to attack an unarmed soldier they were following, and not to chase and attack enemies running away from the battlefield. No destruction to property, respect to the cultural values. And invaders from Arab especially, they did opposite. They always attack during night when the soldiers and people are sleeping. And if one is defeated, they chase and they kill the person. And in running enemies, they attack and kill them. Wherever they went, they won the war, they destroyed the property, they destroyed the cultural places, destroyed the places of worship and places of education. And they did not have any respect to any cultural values. So they had the opposite thing what the kings in ancient India had. Next, please. There is one example of Prithviraj Chauhan. Before that, I go to Lord Krishna. Jarasandh attacked 16 times on Mathura. All the 16 times, Jarasandh was defeated and ran away. Then Krishna left him. Okay, he's running away, not to chase, because that was the idealism at that time. And on 17th time, when Jarasandh came, then Lord Krishna fled away from Mathura to save the city, to save the kingdom. And he established another kingdom in Dwarka. Something very opposite happened during the time of Prithviraj Chauhan from 1177 to 1192. He was there. When Muhammad Ghori attacked, and then he was defeated. 16 times he attacked Prithviraj Chauhan, his kingdom. The capital was in Ajmer. And he was defeated and ran away. Prithviraj Chauhan did not chase him. But on 17th time, like Jarasandh, he attacked, defeated Prithviraj Chauhan, killed Prithviraj Chauhan, cut his wife into pieces, who was supposed to be the most beautiful lady of the world at that time. And his temple he had made was destroyed completely. So such a thing, the complete, the extreme idealism that went against the kings at that time. Next page. Okay, all the religions and politics and she is talking about, and then Rajput war ideology with the Rajput where they followed all rules and regulations during the war, and according to the war rules, the Rajput retreat is something like committing a sin and dying in the field, battlefield, considered a matter of pride. Even the ladies, they burned themselves, not saved themselves. See, Muhammad Ghori did the opposite thing. Every time he saved himself, then collected the people, army, attacked. But they preferred to die in the battlefield than running out of the battlefield. Next, please. Anyhow, something says written. Okay, next. Non-existence of organized war strategy. For example, in Arab, they talked of jihad to spread their belief and religion throughout the world, either by force or by persuasion. And they were successful in that one. That was the zeal with that they fought the war. In Europe, they had the crusade. Crusade was to safeguard themselves, to safeguard their religion, their culture. And they fought the war for about 1,000 years with the Arabs. But such zeal did not exist in India. And it was one of the factors for the defeat of the kings. Next, please. Of course, I have talked about. Next. Next, I have talked about. See, there is certain region where by the Arab attacks to loot the enormous wealth collected, especially in the temples. And many times they attacked on India, destroyed the temples, looted the money, and went back. And of course, rest I have talked about. the non-violence which existed in modern India also, and Raghupur Reet Sada Chali Ai Pran Jai Par Bachan Ne Jai, that was the idealism. Because of that, they also suffered. Lack of destruction and sabotage, and I have talked about. Please, next slide. And in modern days, Mahatma Gandhi gave the idealism of non-violence. And Jawaharlal Nehru that adopted it. He wanted to be completely peaceful, non-violent, and that's why the case of Kashmir he took to UN, that whatever the United Nations decide, and he will carry that. So another problem was China. There might be attack from China. Tibet, which was the dominion state of India, he gave to China to buy the peace, and signed a agreement, non-aggressive agreement, and 5 principles with China. And he thought that now I'm peaceful with Pakistan, with China, and nobody is going to attack us, and we don't need any weapon. So I give you one example. In Kanpur, there was a gun factory. The gun were manufactured for the army. He said, oh, we don't need gun. Make shoes for the people in that factory. And what I have read, that at the time of independence, India had the very good infrastructure for the production of armament. The best infrastructure in the whole of Asia. And he dismantled everything and no arms production took place. But thanks to China, in 1962, they attacked India, occupied our 45,000 square kilometers of land, but they gave a lesson that you must be strong, you must procure armament. And then the government tried to do the same. In 1965 war, we were at war, and then we were winner in the 1971 war. So once again, the extreme idealism has come in the Indian polity. They were the defeat, they were the downfall. And that was probably what she wanted to say. So I thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Rai Saab, and I will convey the thanks to Professor Nisha Singh as well. Now, if you let me share, I'm the last speaker and you don't need to introduce me. So I can, in the interest of time, I'll try to finish my presentation sooner. As we are talking, part of my presentation also had slides or has slides that Professor Rai presented on behalf of Professor Nisha Singh. Could you please enable me to present? Okay, thank you. So let me share my screen, and I'll move relatively quickly to make sure. This is the topic of my presentation. What I'm talking about is what are the challenges in retaining and benefiting from our heritage. So first, how the heritage was destroyed. Look at this slide. If I had more time, I would have requested you, some of you, to answer the question, where 100 years ago, the country owned 25% of the world's land and controlled 25% of the world's population. Today, owns less than 1% of land and less than 0.5% of the population. in 100 years, from 1922 at the height of British Empire to today. So that's how quickly the empire can decline. Now, you know about the Maslow's theory of human needs. In essence, what I would want to focus on is the self-actualization, the research part, the thinking part comes after you have reached the stage of satisfying your physical needs, your safety, belonging, and self-esteem. So what the colonizers did was destroy the self-esteem of people. So during colonization, be it Mughals or the British, as Professor Rai talked about, you had physical destruction of industry through policy, and I'll take one example, destruction of knowledge base associated with the above two, and with that convincing that colonizers' knowledge base is superior to that of the colonized. That is, lowering their self-esteem and making them feel inferior. Take the example of Ayurveda. It was a much superior treatment mechanism than allopathy 100 years ago. There were inoculations and all that stuff. Through policy, they made Ayurveda as inferior. In fact, in 1914, Madras Medical Registration Act was passed that denied registration to Ayurvedic doctors, that's Veds, who were serving 80% of the population at the time. There are other policies you would see, for example, education. Maharana Ranjit Singh had almost 100% literacy, and then when the process was changed, we had, almost most of us were illiterate in Punjab. Now, if you look at this graph, we talked about it 2 days ago as well. You see that India was producing roughly 1/3 of the world's GDP, which came down to around 3% during the time or shortly after the British had left. And then it has come back to about 8% now. But how did the decline occur? Now, then rather than focusing on that, let me get back to what was ancient India, that is the pluralistic system. Professor Rai talked about it, so I won't go too much into it. You had, the second oldest mosque in India, and that the source is not me, it's the Islamic research. And then you have Jews had been there forever. You had, and they were so comfortable that they said it's a substitute for Jerusalem in India. And then you obviously know about the Professor Rai talked about, Apostle Thomas coming to India, and then the church in Kerala. By the way, if you I looked at the area, they are within few kilometers of each other. That is the oldest mosque, the synagogue, and the church. So, peaceful growth, that's what India did, didn't destroy others and tolerated others. What we didn't do was go and did preemptive strikes, as Professor Rai said. Now, when you look at growth, not just in India, but all over, even in the Mughal period, in the interest of time, I'll just focus on this. Even during 7th and 8th centuries, both Muslims and non-Muslims were encouraged to develop the scientific work, and a lot of it was transferred from India into Arabic. They had set up special center for translation where the books were brought from India and they were translated. If you look at Ottoman Empire, they had created a system, that was the system they created, where they took Christian youth and then said anyone and whoever could help, they could come and give her protection, like Jewish refugees. So a lot of growth occurred when there was tolerance. When you look at Mughal rulers, lot of, they had obviously superior gun technology, while India had the fundamental knowledge, but we had moved away from, the weapon systems because of going towards peaceful communication and all that stuff, with the Buddhism coming, the Jainism coming, and all, and all that. So we had intolerant that we tolerated. We obviously lacked guns, and like when British came, they did not have superior ships, but they have superior naval ships to attack, and that's how they were able to win over. As you can see, during 1498 to 1739, 5 of the European powers were vying to establish bases in India because of the richness of the country. Like, as I had noted a couple of days ago, that in 1700, India was still producing 27% of the world's GDP. So now, if you look at how growth occurred in Europe, it was moving from intolerance to tolerance. You had Martin Luther's protest. I'm sorry, this king is by mistake. In 1517, Parliament was persuaded to repeal heresy laws, no burning of Protestants, in essence saying tolerance. During this period, 1550 to 1650, 100 years, grain production increased by almost 75%. To borrow technology, they allowed Dutch engineers. So you had during that period, London population grow from 70,000 to 400,000. So it was a lot of the tolerance, the pluralism emerging, which has been the bedrock of India from ancient India to current India. US, same thing. Initially, there was intolerance, and then there was tolerance. Our Philadelphia was called the city of brotherly love because, any denomination of Christianity was accepted. So what lessons do we learn? And that is where I would have liked to have some discussion, but but that is something I would leave it open. And if you want to send your comments, I would love to have them. One of them obviously is, as Dr. Singh pointed out, that Indians lost because we were sticking to our principles and not modifying to face the modern scenario that is modifying principles of war and that kind of thing, and also to maybe do preemptive strikes, which we never did. So I would appreciate getting your feedback. With that, I would like to thank everyone. And back to you, Vaishali.
Thank you, sir, for such a detailed and enlightening session. Well, thank you everyone for cooperation and support throughout all the sessions. We present our wholehearted gratitude to our chairperson, Mr. Narendra Rustagi, sir, and to all our esteemed guests. We also present this vote of thanks to all our organizers, volunteers, and our listeners. The upcoming next 2 sessions will be held tomorrow, that is 23rd July. Tomorrow, we also have our concluding session. We cordially invite you all to the following sessions with us. Here, signing off. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Rustagi, very much.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you,
very- such a
Professor.
nice
I
talk.
appreciate it. Thank you.